It's been 2 minutes or so, so I'll go ahead and not make you guys wait any longer. Looks like we're good. I'm going to start us off. So yes, graphs. In Workamajig, we have a place where you can store graphs now across our menu system here. You'll see that we have our main folders of modules that we divide Workamajig in. And within each of these, we'll show these icons for graphs. I'll click on this just to give you a preview of what it is if you have never seen that, or maybe, I mean, that this one should be accessible to everyone. But the idea is that we want to help you represent information in graphs, line, bar, pie, and there's one we call key metrics. We'll obviously get into that in a second. And why we've broken that up into different places is so that depending on your users, they can access, if they can access those main folders, right? They can find those graphs there. And we just label them accordingly to that folder that they're under. Luckily, you can create graphs that can exist in more than one place, just so that other people can reach them, or that so they're not hiding, and they're centralized. So these are just, again, a few of the options or menu folders that have the graphs across. So like I said, maybe one or two that do not have it, but they all should. And they're just labeled. Now, obviously, if someone has access to the full menu, maybe you want to organize your graphs depending on the module. We'll talk about some other sorting grouping options, but just wanted to show you where those are. And obviously switching to a different, selection or module gives you different information. You guys should, in your instances, if you have access to the graphs, you should have some canned graphs there that we try to load onto your systems. If you don't and would like to have those, please reach out to your account manager. Again, that is easily done by emailing them at support@workamajig.com. So it's all just lowercase, support@workamajig.com. And we can see if we can load those canned ones there for you. Otherwise, obviously, today's session is to show you how to make one, or make a few of them anyways. But in order to get them started, we need to talk about how to allow you to create them, or at least see them, right? And so I'm going to go to this is my sandbox. So in the back end of my sandbox, again, you may not be admins, maybe you don't have access, maybe you share this later with someone who does. But I have a system setup gears icon here that I'll click on. And we have a place where we set up security rights, security settings for everybody. Remember that you are assigned to security groups. As you can see, here's the people that are under my account managers, right? And the rights that are here. Again, just to kind of show you what this looks like if you're not familiar with it. But how I kind of track down what lets you see or run graphs or create graphs is to use the terminology custom reports or custom. Basically, if you can create a custom report, you can create a graph. And also, if you can see a custom report, you can see graphs. But at the same time, if you have access to those modules, as I mentioned, those folders, that graph option is already included. So you shouldn't have a problem if you already have that folder to see those graphs. If you do, again, reach out to us individually, support@workamajig.com. We'll take a look at what's going on. But so I typed in the word custom here. It's really these three pieces under the system administration: designing, running, and editing. That's what I check on just to make sure that I can create graphs. Again, you probably turn these off for maybe those that you don't want to modify or change those graphs that you've created. And that way somebody is obviously in control the whole time. So just being aware that it's design, and it's going to mention reports, but we've linked them to graphs just because graphs are made from the reporting, custom reporting feature. So you can see those there, okay? Now, the other thing that you'll also want to be aware of is that not only do we set here what they can run or how they can run them, right? That they can design them or edit them. But what custom reporting is based off of is the data sets. That's another core of Workamajig. Do we allow people to run certain data groups, time or project information or, transactional data, etc. And you can find it if you're in these screens, or if someone can get to these screens for you. When you go to the edit button for each of the security groups, right? I can travel through mine and I can edit mine here. This is the data sets. That's what is allowing the person to catch these data sets in order to create reports from those. So it's whether it's visible or it's hidden. You can toggle just to turn them on or turn them all on or turn them all off, depending again on the people that are assigned to that group. So those are some of the preliminary things that you'll want to check to make sure before you start creating graphs. Now, how do you check to make sure you have it right or that you have access to it? Well, once you've passed that point, you're going to go over to our main menu again under the Everyone button. We have a report center here, and this is where you can design custom reports. I have, or I'm sorry, my screen is showing canned reports on the left side, but it's not going to show those data sets that I just mentioned a minute ago. So in order to show those, when I go click on this new custom report, it is going to show my data sets here. So I have my, they're grouped sort of like in the same style as the modules. We have a sales/contact management section. We have a project section and all its data sets that we have for you. Trafficking, purchasing, yep, purchasing, that's pretty long here. Billing, but all of those those data sets that we just showed, they're organized here. That's what turns them on or off. So again, hey, I want so-and-so to create graphs or reports, but I don't want them to create reports that have more sensitive data or things that maybe may not pertain to them. By going to selecting that visible, non-visible from a moment ago, that's what controls what shows up here. And then they can go ahead and create custom reports and graphs. Okay. Now, in order to create graphs, you also have to be familiar, be comfortable in creating custom reports because it's really the same setup, the same design. So maybe what we can do is talk about time entries, right? That could be a report that people are interested in usually. So we have under traffic, time detail data as one of the data sets. And, maybe we talk about time entries in regards to amounts like billable amounts, right? So, if I go to billable hours, right? And I go to maybe, organized by a client, right? So client or project, right? So client ID. So this is basically trying to just introduce you to the idea of custom report building. The columns are going to be your data. How your data is grouped is going to be set by the groups right here. So you can, set, oh, I want to see, who has billable hours per client, and I can go ahead and put, username. So let me do that. There we go. And so on and so forth, right? We have the data here, some simple fields. We are going to use the filters to make sure that, we don't let this report run, especially if you guys have been with us for a long time. We can set up, a specific, client filters, right? We can pick from any of or equal to. There's quite a bit of filters here that you can use. And again, getting comfortable with report writing. This is basically a crash course, but at the same time, just showing you some of the capabilities here. You can prompt whoever's running this report to enter client ID information, or maybe even look at it from a project level, right? If I pick project number, and again, maybe this one will do equal to instead of any of, so we can show the difference. In the settings, we can rename the report. So we'll do, webinar report for graphs. And you can select if you're going to keep this for yourself or if you're going to allow, your other security groups to see them, right? I can turn all these on for my group so they can find them. Maybe if I'm kind of learning about it and I don't want to show it just yet, I can keep it private until it's, ready for the group to see. And then once I have, what I think is what I'm looking for, then I can save changes. And it's going to show me the screen, right? And I can, just click search. This is my sandbox, so I shouldn't have too much information. And it's pretty much raw data, right? Hey, these are my clients, and this is the amount. This is me because it's usually just me in the sandbox, and these are the number of billable hours in each of those clients. And again, maybe if I clean it up, I could have done it by project, or I can see as I collapse, the total values, right, of each of those. So that's just a way to introduce you to the idea of, where's the data coming from and how it's being populated. And obviously, we will have a webinar on custom report building, cleaning this up, adding more stuff. But the idea, again, is how do I get myself ready for graphs? Because what will happen is that then we can go over to, let's pick billing, right? And I can go to the billing graph section. And here is where we'll now translate what we saw with our billing report or our billable hours report and add something like this to the section. Again, these are my canned graphs already. So you see some pie charts, bar graphs across here. So lots of great things that you can see that we can have you do. So let me do the same thing that I would have done for that report that I just created. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and anytime you get to this screen, there's going to be an edit button. So in this edit button, I'm going to be able to see that it's now in an editable status. Just to mention what's showing up on here, I can switch or move around the graphs that already exist. I can have them stretch out and take a little bit more space if I want to show more, right? I can grow them, right? And we'll talk about the copy feature in a second. I can remove them by clicking on the trash icon. Once they're gone, by the way, there's no undo. Or I can edit them, right? If I want to either, obviously modify what they're showing, or maybe I want to interact with them a little more, they'll be there. But let's start off fresh and let's start a new one. So you'll see there's a new button at the top. So I'll go ahead and click on that. Now, again, here's the same list that we saw in the new custom report list of data sets. That's going to match up. And it didn't matter if I'm in that billing module. I can still see all the data sets. It's just to organize my information, right? So I can start to either go back to traffic, right, and pick the time detail data, or I can just start typing time and it'll help me whittle down results. So I can choose that again. Now this is going to look a little different, right? It's not a grouping columns. In this case, it's more of well, what kind of graph and what are the properties of the graph that I'm looking for. So here's where you would choose the graph type. We'll go through these in a moment, but I just wanted to mention that. We'll have an x-axis and a y-axis. Now, this is meant to show you that we consider some things to work in a certain axis, right? So account manager, right, would be something that's only for the x-axis, whereas if in the y-axis, I don't have account manager. It's more about the numbers at that point, right? Probably more applicable or more easier to see if it's more of a bar graph or a line graph, right? To see those two comparisons. Now, in my pie graph, I'll still have the same information, but what I'll have here is, maybe I'll do user, name, or maybe I'll do client, right? That would be another one because we looked at the other one and we were looking at client ID, or in this case, maybe we'll make client name so it's a little easier to see. And then the y-axis, maybe that's where we look at the billable hours, right? There we go. And then when the system is, counting the information, it could say, well, I'm going to sum them, which is usually what we would pick. But you can do other styles of roll up. You can do an average. You actually just do a count, which if it's a matter of hours, obviously we usually may just do the sum, but sometimes it can be a little different. Again, more for the webinar on custom reporting. Or I can just say, what's the max or the min, depending on the data. So that's the options there. And then there's some sorting when it comes to, low to high, high to low. How do I want maybe a legend to display? How the pie chart shows up. So as I'm playing with this, I don't have a way to know, like, am I doing this right? So I recommend to my clients that they try it out, try the best guess as to, okay, this is the kind of information that I want to see. And then they'll click refresh. And this gives them a preview of that information. And I can even come over to the pie chart and I can get some data based on the information. Now, I probably have a lot of clients, and so it's probably picking the top categories or top information here, and then it's doing a combination of the rest. That's why it's showing it as others. And I'll talk about why it's doing that in a second too. But that's really cool, right? Now, maybe, the pie wasn't the way to go. Maybe I want to do a bar graph. So I change it and then I refresh. Now, one thing that maybe I need to do is that, maybe I need to clean up some of my information here. This is where that others category comes in. There's a lot to look into here. And well, again, I'll show you in a second how to limit that. There's obviously going to be a line graph. So if I push that, it's going to do multiple points. Again, too many points here in this case. But we'll obviously show you some cleaner ones in a moment. And then there is a key metrics, but I need to mention that key metrics is a little bit more picky. We have to, it'll change your screen. It'll just ask for certain points and it'll just mention them. It's just more of a word display dashboard. So like I said, I'll show that there. And let's see here. Is there a filtering option that will remove client account managers that are no longer active? Yeah, so the system already kind of takes account of that. But there's also a point where, if someone just left, right, do we really want to leave them out? Maybe you still want to track what information's there. So that's where the filters comes in. We'll talk about that in a moment. So good question. We'll roll into that in just a moment. But yes, you can filter for things. So we'll show you that. I guess I need to make sure I marked to answer your question, or that I'm going to answer your question. One last thing before I get to the filters though, is that if you do pick line or bar, it is going to ask you for a series. So, again, what is the line or bar, really breaking that up into, so maybe there's, at this point, then maybe I can start looking by username. So I'll pick that and maybe bar graph is good. So if I refresh, you're gonna see these are all my users, right? And these are the hours independently to that. Again, maybe too much information for this style here, but the idea is that with the series, I can get the breakdown of, it's not just a bar in all one color. It's telling me what makes up those billable hours in each of those clients in this case. So there you go. Yes, so somebody asked, I'm getting an error message. You've exceeded 1,000 data point limit for charts. So if you guys have been with us for a while and we don't do filters, right, then it is going to give you an error saying, I definitely have too much to show you and I can't even put it on the graph. So that's where filters again will come in. So let's clean this up. So let me go ahead and no matter which bar I chose or graph type I chose, except pie chart, there's an option here, but filters, right? So we could say, maybe um, usually, so I can say, you know, active user. So that could be an option, right? And it's equal to yes, right? So that limits things. Or I could say, you know, active, I think, was there an active? Yeah, active is an active project, right? And it's equal to, again, yes. Or I can ask the user to answer that question as they're interacting with the graph. So those are ways to do it. Now, obviously, for your question about filtering active and not active, you can set the values here. So that way you don't get that error, right? And then if I go back and then I do a refresh, see, now I have even less people. So that'll help produce a smaller value of that information for you guys. So yeah, good questions, guys, on those filters. Now, what was it? Was it line? If I refresh, that's my line graph right there. Right. Now, obviously, line is more to track, you know, movement across maybe time or months or something like that. So that's going to be a little more appropriate then. But you see that, and then obviously I showed you the pie one already. So yeah, filters are good. Again, if you're new and new to custom reporting, definitely reach out to us for help. We'll give you some tips and tricks and tips to that, or you can watch our webinar that we already have posted on our site for custom reporting. I'm sure my associates, my colleagues have already done some of those tips, but just wanted to show you this is how it's kind of working between the two with filters. Yeah, good question from Kimberly about unprompted filters. So let me do that. So this was just a test, right? A is that my filter is going to work if I do less. So let me make sure that I'm answering your question. So what will happen is if I choose to prompt, right? I will leave it there and we'll come back in a moment. I'm going to finish up settings, but I'll come back to your question. Quick thing on settings, I can rename the graph. So we'll do, you know, webinar test. There's a legend. You can choose where it's going to appear. You can add a description that will just be there to kind of help you know what the point of that graph is for, you know, graph for webinar. There is an option for tabs. Let me come back to that. There's an option also for labeling your axes and setting up targets. I'll come back to that also. What I wanted to quickly mention before I answer the question about unprompted values and filters, because I'm going to leave the screen, is that if I do choose to do a pie graph, and we'll just refresh this data and go back to settings, it is going to give me a maximum item count. So that's one of the differences if I choose pie instead of the other ones. So that way, you know, it's 12 things, and then after that, don't count anymore, right? So that's sort of to limit, in a way, filter for the pie. All right, so let me change this layout from pie to bar because that was clean. And this is the one that has the most data, and we're going to interact with the unprompted filter in a second. So let me save changes. So I'm gonna, once I have the save changes, I'm gonna still see that I'm on edit mode here, but if I scroll down, it's a little messy, but I'm sure my bar is all the way at the bottom. There it is, webinar test. So I have that option to drag or to move or to collapse, right? As I mentioned, you know, make it larger, you know, fit more data in here. But once I have what I'm looking for, I'm gonna click save, right? And then here's my test. Now, to interact with those unprompted filters, well, I'm just going to reload my screen, which is fine. If I want to interact with the unprompted filters, I'll now have an option. I don't have to be on edit. So if I'm just a user and I want to interact with whoever set up the graph to prompt filters for, or unprompted filters, I go here, and then it's going to say active project equal to, and I can say yes, right? And I can click search, and then it changes my results. Or I can say no, and obviously you get different results, probably. Yep, so it keeps changing my bar to something else. So you can do that with client ID. Now, the active one is more of a yes or no, and maybe it's easier to let that be sort of defaulted in the graph for them. But if I go back to my edit and to edit that particular dashboard, right, I click edit again, and just remind me what I have. And maybe I do go back to I pick as a filter client ID, because that's how the system reads them. And then I can do any of, that's one of the options, and then I can prompt. So maybe that's the way to go here. And then the other one I can just say yes on this one. That way I don't have to worry about the data being too much. So by still having one that's prompting versus the other ones, right? The other ones are helping the user who gets to that graph know that we've taken care of them up to a point, and they just need to help themselves by filtering further, right? And then obviously naming the graph appropriately. Then I can see that I have my graph here. I obviously need to just click save. And then when I go to filter this time, it's going to give me client ID any of. And instead of having to type something in here, oh, it's got to refresh. I can say, okay, well, I see that I have MLB, Rivera family or Bubble, these are all my weird names. So I can literally just go and pick, and I chose client ID just because it's more of a drop down. I'm not sure if client name will do it. A lot of things to remember with custom reporting, but this is just one way to show it. So let's see here. I'm sure I have my Rivera family. Yep. There we go. And then MLB is probably MLB. So if I just choose those three and I say done, and then I do search, it's only going to show me the three. So that's the big difference. How far do you want to help them, and how far do you want them to help themselves as to get to the results of what they want to see? And in this case, it is doing a series, right? Because I've chosen to differentiate between two different users, or there's two users with hours. So Don has 5 hours for that client. I have the rest at 36. Okay. So that's pretty neat. Like I said, setting those up, seeing how they work, getting the filters in here. Now, what I've done is I prepped some stuff for you guys to look at, because this is how another way that I would recommend to my clients is how I kind of learned once they release this feature on how to maybe get more creative with what you have, what's available. So I'm going to go over to a different place where I've staged these guys. And so in this case, it's my sandbox is just for me here on their owner graphs, right? I took the time to kind of get these going. So, what information maybe I'm interested as an owner, there's some line, there's some bar, there's some pie. But actually, let me give some attention to the key metrics. That's this one right here. So I actually forgot to rename my key metrics bar or graph or, statement here or display. But if you find a graph and you're like, how does it work? What's going on? What I would do is have you go to the page, right? Go to the graph section, click edit, and click edit again. Now, had I picked bar, line, or pie, you've seen that already with me so far, but when you choose key metrics, you're gonna get a table. Now it'll be blank, it won't have any rows, but you'll be able to add metrics. And when you add them, you pretty much get a new row. And these are the rows of information that you're gonna get. Now, it is going to be dependent again on which of the data sets you chose, right? As a reminder, again, when you click new, each data set has its own fields. Sometimes the data sets can cross each other, meaning that there's a data set that talks about maybe project transactions that cross into, vouchers and time entries, right? And so they're combined that way. So you want to kind of, through practice, through asking, through experience, you'll know more about the data sets. We try our best to list or explain what the data sets in them each have to help you out. But, even I, had to take the time to kind of explore them, ask questions, create reports and graphs to get familiar with them. But when I chose my project summary, I was interested in finding out, how much have we built for that project? What are our costs? What was the budget, or what's the budget currently so far, right? So that's where that's coming from with key metrics for that data set called project summary. using those fields from that data set. And then going into my filters and saying, okay, the user who is going to run this needs to pick the client ID. And then, so let me make sure that I rename this. So we'll do, what can I call it? Project info, metrics, project metrics. Yeah, there you go, project metrics. And then I can save changes, right? So there we go. And then I can save here. And then this is right now running without any filters. So it's really summing everything that I have in the system, everything that I've build, all the costs and my budget across all my projects. But if I want, or across projects for all my clients. So if I want to maybe, let's see, something that doesn't have as much, this guy probably doesn't have as much. So see how my numbers change. Now they got really tiny. Hey, I'm billed this much and I didn't have any costs and these were my budgets. This is just to present data for you. So that's how I would approach it when you're learning about graphs. Click on the edit, go take a look at, what is already displayed there. Oh yeah, the key metrics, it actually mentions those 3 fields as dashboards, and it's just adding the numbers together, and I'm filtering, or the report was already filtering, and I can see the settings, and that's how I know that how it works. Let me take some questions here. So yes, to the question, is there a manual that shows what data fields are available? Yes, we've tried our best to show you in our support guide what those are. The problem is that they change quite a bit. Let me see if I can open a new one here and let's put, actually, I think it's going to be, let me see if it's under data set. So this is our guide, by the way. I support.workamajig.com. Memorize it, tattoo it, put it on a sticky note, whatever it is. But we have custom report data sets as the first one. And we try our best to kind of mention those. I guess it is just a copy of the descriptions. I think the one that, let's see, purchasing, that's the overview. Oh yeah. So yeah, here it is. Now, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes we get requests to add new data sets. Again, at the discretion of our development team, if it's appropriate to put it in the right data set, in the right place. And so we may be a little behind on this. And to be honest, they're pretty long. And even with the manual, I would say still ask us. I mean, feel free to bug us. And just to kind of piggyback off of that, we do have in our help guide page, we have this chat feature. You guys can bug us during our work hours. We're in Arizona. So I guess we're either Mountain or Pacific time. And just ask us, hey, I'm trying to run a report and I want to list these 2 data sets. We'll figure it out for you. If we're on other chats and you don't want to wait, it'll send an email. We'll respond back to you. So yes, we have it. Would I ask my worst enemy to come here and look at it? Maybe. Depends on my mood. But we do. It's just not fun, right? So that's the question on that. Hopefully that answered your question. The drop downs obviously help, but that's one way to do it. How do you limit data to a specific time period? That's a great question. Let me answer that. So if I go back to my project here in my filters, we actually have, if the data set has date information, right? Date, right? So here we go. Here's some of the date fields. So that's what I like to do. Instead of trying to figure out the fields, I just like, okay, what's the most generic name that I can give a field? Hey, there's time period. So I could have put time. Obviously, because of the experience, I know it's date. We like to use the word date more. So you can see that we have that here. And maybe this has to do with, like a project start date, right? Remember your projects, and again, this is a little of a tangent, but remember your projects have a lot of data information. What if they cross years, all that good stuff. So we have project start date, we have project end date or complete date. We have, obviously if you're talking about tasks, maybe there's a last task date, maybe the due date, maybe there's a first task start date, right? And then from here, you can use the conditions, of between. I love that. That's my favorite to go to. And then you can either have the system ask the user to select the date, the time range, right? Or I could say, okay, well, first of the year, and I can change my my graph name to 2022, right? And then it'll just pick up everything for the year like that, right? It's in the back end. The user that's interacting with the graph can't change that unless obviously they have the ability to edit the graph. But then they'll give them that information. I can save it and save again and wait for it to refresh. And I probably, now I have even less because I picked something unique that I haven't really touched to get some lower numbers here. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It is going to work the same way with custom reporting. Can I get certain data in a certain time period? That's how I do it. I use my filters. I use a date field, and I use between. You can sometimes get some advantage with some of the data points or some of the data sets here, because in the conditions, it'll also mention, like on, before, or after a date, or month to date, or it can be running concurrently with you this month, next month, last month, probably nothing on next month, right? This year, last year, today, yesterday. So next, we have weeks. So we have quite a bit of set data points there that, again, will travel concurrently with you in time. So again, just a tidbit of it. Again, feel free to ask us or work with us or email us, in order to get some more suggestions. Watch our custom report webinar, because I'm sure they drilled more into that there. By the way, to remove a filter or a row, you hover over it, and on the right side there's a trash icon. So there's that. All right, good questions. Now we're cooking here. So let me mark the ones that I've answered. Okay, what is the date range for the fiscal year filter? Yeah, so the fiscal year one is based on the settings in the backend. In the backend, you have a place that says, what's my fiscal year? When's the start? And then obviously it'll do 12 months. So your admins are controlling that, and then you're just picking fiscal year. So Kimberly, good question. That's where it references that fiscal year is in the backend. So I answered that. Are graphs capable of providing a percentage? Yeah. So if I go to, I think pi was the one that I had. So I'm not gonna, well, I guess I'll save changes in this one. But let's see here. You can see there's a percentage on the pie charts, right? 16%, 83%, 25, 4, 16, 58. So that's one way to do it. If you're looking for, can you calculate percentages? Like maybe here as a bar graph with a Y. Yeah, it gets a little fancy. I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm going to talk about some advanced options. Well, I'm briefly going to talk about advanced options. It starts to get off into a tangent, Rebecca, when it comes to percentages and calculations. So bar graphs, or I'm sorry, graphs usually don't have that, but they could. I guess I could see that. But how I would answer your question is, if we can build a report, just a custom report, right? The Excel or the table version of it, and we can display the percentages, then we can more than likely do that in a graph. So that's how I would answer you. I just don't want to take too much to get into that. I would say that's definitely something to reach out to your account manager for and get some specifics on it. But yes, and when Rebecca, when I talk about those advanced features, or in a moment when I get to that, I'll just mention this is the start of where you can start to look at it. So I will come back to mentioning that. So thank you. I'll actually leave that question open so I don't forget it. Okay, next question. Does a user have to have access to a particular module to see the graph saved? Yes. So if they don't have, let's say, billing, they won't see the billing, obviously the module, right? So they won't see the 4 dots or options, and obviously they won't be able to click and see whatever's in here. Now, what I was saying to you earlier, what I was going to get into, and maybe I pick certain service income, because I don't think I have that anywhere else. What you can do is you can go to edit and you can copy to, and you'll see that we have the other graph menus listed here. So if somebody doesn't have access to that screen that you want them to come to see that graph, but they have access to another one that they do, that you want them to see it under, then they can go ahead and click on this. I'll send this to owner because I've been living there in regards to my presentation. So then I'll save, not save, it doesn't matter. So service income. So if I go now to my admin and owner graphs and let it show up, there it is, service income at the bottom. And then I can edit it, make it look nice, all that good stuff. So good question. I would say you can have them exist, copied in all the places. That way everybody sees them. But to be honest, most of everyone should have access to creatives. That'd be weird if your team didn't, and you can probably nest them there. That's pretty global. It's more the other ones that maybe they don't have access to. So send them over to creatives or create them there and you should be good to find. Obviously, and I'll just click here because I'm already on that chart, on that graph screen. The other way that we've mentioned the ability to display things for people, right, is if you click on edit and you click on any of these under settings, you are allowing or not allowing these graphs to be visible to certain security groups. It's the same for report writing. Hey, I created this great, financial report, but I don't want 90% of the team to see it. And I know that maybe my accounting team is the one that needs to see it. So I'll just pop it up for them. So that way, even on if it's that creative graphs, but I put everything on there, but then I can control who's seeing it. I'm using this. So good question. That allowed me to show you how to copy graphs to other places, brings me back to who it's visible to, so you can control that visibility. Obviously, they also have to be able to, run that data set, make it visible for them and their security groups. So all those dots that I mentioned earlier at the beginning, they're there for that reason. They're specifically there for that reason. So good question, good question. I won't save changes to this. So I'll mark that answered. Does a user have to have, oh, I think I answered that already. Oh, it's already done. Okay, just confirming that you can create any graph under any module since the datasets are not module bound, correct? Yes, you can create any graph under any module. As long as you have access to the datasets, meaning, when I go click on edit and new, as long as I have the access to any dataset, right? Yes, yeah, because then obviously then you can. Good question. So, and answer that one. What would you say is a good graph to create a project for a project manager to keep track of projects that are on schedule versus behind? Yeah, so again, that's where it gets a little specific on the question on, what do I show project managers? I don't think we have anything by default. Let me go peek at my graphs for project managers. I think what I've seen is that clients will obviously say, I like a bar graph versus a pie graph versus a line graph versus, whatever it is they're looking for. And then they got to tell us, what's your data, right? Your anchor. Is it, I think, and I'll give you the data set answer, meaning the field that you're looking for. So what I would do is I would go to edit, and I won't take too much time. I don't want to get to a point where I'm creating custom reports or graphs for people today. Unfortunately, not have the time for that. But I just want to show you that what I would go and look at would be in the project summary report data set. That's where we have the option for, let me see, schedule status color. So it's a really weird name for a field, but the point is that that schedule status color is going to be a reference to and then I get out of that, to when you go to your project manager projects listing, it's this color, the project status color. So this will tell you you're good or not good. So if you go again, that field, to that data set called project summary, and the field is called project schedule status color or schedule status color. That's reference to this. That's in reference to it, and it just means that, hey, your project is green, red, or yellow, and maybe you can do a pie chart or a bar graph or something, right? Where you can customize it. Again, can't get into too much more than that today, but hopefully that helps start you off. You can, send us that email, say, hey, Manuel said to try that field. Can you tell me more? Can you help me build it? Because we want to empower you guys at the same time. Yeah, we can build them for you, but it just takes a little while to get those reports going. So yeah, so that's how you would do it. So hopefully that answered your question. Okay, and then Gail is asking if you have copied from one to another. So I'm assuming, Gail, you're talking about if I copy from one graph module to another one, and then make a change. Yeah, it's not gonna change the original one. No, it's just making a copy. They're not linked. They're not saying, oh, this one exists on L5. No, it just makes a copy, so it just puts it somewhere else. So yeah, if you change the one under, owners, here, I'll prove it to you. Really easy. So service income was the one that I made, or that I copied, excuse me. So if I go and edit it, and I just change the name. So I'll put a service incomes, save. Now it's the service incomes, and I went to billing, I think is where I was. Let's see if I was right. Let's see. Service income, still without the S. So yep, it won't change it. It's just making a copy so you have it somewhere else. So good question, good question. So I want to go back to Rebecca's question and talk about some of the advanced stuff real quick as we're gearing towards the end of it. Under the admin, under the owner graphs, where I have some examples. And I'll point out, Rebecca, when it's your turn, or it's addresses sort of your question. But anyways, here, if I go to edit, I want to talk about this line graph. Actually, let me cancel. You'll see that I have these yellow markers here, or these dotted lines. So if I go to edit and I go to edit again, this is where on the line graph, I can choose under settings to have an upper target and a lower target. So that's one advanced thing there that I want to show you. The other thing you'll notice, and I guess I can go to layout for this to refresh, is that I have my months. So that's kind of cool, right? Somebody I think was asking earlier about maybe time and date range and all that. So this is where you can get a little fancy. And what I've done here is I used a calculated field for my x-axis, and I labeled it month. So basically what I did, and again, I'm reverse engineering this so you can see this, I went ahead and when I clicked on the calculated field, when it used to just be just a regular x-axis that would pick, from my data set points, it allows me to come in here and let me give you a quick background. Our system is based off of a SQL language. So I'm using SQL language code to create a calculated field. And I'm asking the system to say, if I have a field called date added, because these are project requests when they were added, tell me the month they were added. So this is the code for SQL to say, pull the month name out. And so you can do that, or you can, add two numbers together. You can do, obviously, in regards to Rebecca, your question about percentages, you can do, X divided by Y times 100, right? So you can get a percentage field. So you can, as long as the data set has the numbers, right, that you want to calculate, it'll do that. More than likely, it'll probably be a Y value calculation, right? But again, this is where maybe we need to have you reach out to to your account manager to kind of see what options are available, what data sets to work off of. But they're going to be recommending that you use a calculated field because we more than likely don't have a percentage field for most things. We probably have one or two things, or data sets that probably talk about percentages, but that's more of a calculation, right? We really reference more rough data. You'll also notice, and this is again more of towards the leaning of custom reporting. If you created custom fields, you could reference them there, depending on if they're a text field or a number field or a date field, then we can obviously get information out of it like this. But yeah, that's what it is. Calculated fields, they do exist in custom reports. They get a little more advanced there as well. But with graphs, we allow some of that to exist. So that's what is causing me to be able to list my months and to be able to see, hey, yeah, I had project requests coming in, and these are the ones, the sort of the behavior of approved ones versus the ones that are never sent out by my team to approve. And that's obviously for people that are using project requests. Again, different webinar for a different day. But I am tracking them by month, right? And then obviously in the filters, I don't have a year, so I would have to make sure that I'm picking, date added, in a certain year, right? So there's year information, or I can do between, right? Like I showed you guys, and then I can get more exact. So just be aware of that with dates. But that's hopefully to answer your question about that. Let's see here. So let me mark that. Answer live, we did that. Okay. Somebody asked, how can you find out the type of data in a field? You're right. We don't really mention if it's numeric, if it's a date, if it's a text. But that's why I usually recommend to my clients, if you can build the custom report of it, then you can build a graph. And if you build a custom report of it, it'll obviously show, hey, hours, obviously it's a number, date information, obviously the date. If it's more like username, right, that's data. If you're referring to the custom fields, you would know, right? Your team would know they were the ones that create the custom fields. There is a place in the back end of the system where you can see all the custom fields created, and then it'll tell you the type. But if you don't have access to that, but you still want to know, create a custom report, list out those custom fields, and see what information they appear to be in. That's how I would do it. So hopefully that helps. Again, starts to get out of our discussion of graphs. But that I think that can help you get started. And again, reach out to us if you want more specific help. One last cool thing that I wanted to mention to you is that, or actually two things. One isn't as new and the other one is. So the first one is that you see that I have two pie charts here. And one is, active projects, yes or no. How many projects do I have active or not? I'm sure it has to do something with hours. Yep, because I hover and it talks about hours. So you'll notice that no is blue, red is yes, right? Well, I have a different graph, and this one's about time being entered on time, just because there's a field that tracks that. But you'll see that blue is now yes, no is green, and red is none. Maybe there was just no data in there for time tracking, whether it was entered or not on time. Well, great. I have clients ask, well, can I have no be the same color in both or in other ones? And the answer is technically no. However, to fix it, the workaround is that it's all about sorting your data. So in my, on this one on the left side, on the active projects, if I edit, I can choose which axes or values I want to sort by, and then I can choose to do descending or ascending. So I started here with, if I don't, because I forgot if I changed something, let me go back here and let me click edit again. So if I do a refresh and my no is blue and my red is yes, but I want to change the colors, well, then I better change my sorting, and I refresh. And now my yes is, blue and my red is no. So that's a tip, that's a trick. If that bugs you, I've had a client that really wanted his nose to be blue and his yeses to be red. And there you go, that's how you do it. You have to just work with our sort direction and which one you're sorting by. All right. So there's that. So I'll save changes. And now if I save, now my yeses match. Yes. Now blue is blue, or yes is blue and yes is blue. So FYI on that. And then the other cool thing is that if I have, let's pick on service income. And I say, well, or maybe let me stage it or rephrase this better or put a better picture of it. Let's say that, you guys were talking about, can my graphs exist in more than one place? And we know we can copy them, but I mentioned that, most of your team will have access to the creatives graphs and you can stage things there for them, right? And you can make them visible or drag and drop them or make them bigger or smaller, all that good stuff. But you still want some more organization beyond that. Well, when you have, and I have the stage, that's why I'm coming here. When you have graphs that you want to kind of organize even better, we have what we call tabs or folders. And this is appearing here. So graphs is the default one, but I can go to finance, and now within that same screen, users can toggle to a different one and get different graphs. How do you get there? Well, or how do you make that happen? Well, when I go to graphs, for example, and I want to put that services income, that sounds financial to me. I'll go to edit. I'll click on the edit button here. And on my settings, there's a tab. And then this is an open box, text box. So I have to put in finance to match. It has to match, otherwise it'll create a new tab. And then I'll save. And then I'll save. And now my services income is gone. It's nothing at the bottom. See, I only have to here. But if I go back to my tabs and I go to finance, there's my service incomes. So that's a really neat, cool feature where you can organize your graphs. So yeah, maybe you set up one place for everyone to go to and, under creatives, but then you can, create graphs. In order to have that toggle, you need to have one of your graphs in that screen to have in their field the tab name, right? Otherwise, if they're all blank in that tab section, they're all just going to default to the main graphs tab here. No menu on the left of the word graphs. So take advantage of that. Take a peek at it. Just obviously warn your team, hey, this feature's live, because maybe they'll come in here and be like, I can't find it. I can't find it. Yeah, it's because it's under a different category. So these are not controlled by any security. Your graphs are, your data sets are, your people are, but not the tabs. Okay. So we just try to enhance it just a little bit more. All right, let's see. I think I went through all the questions. Again, sorry that I couldn't deep dive and get specific and build you all the graphs in the world. But I hope this helped. And again, we're encouraging you guys to reach out to us. We're trying to make more of these and hope you guys participate, love them. Well, we try to put them on YouTube on our Workamajig channel. I guess you could subscribe to it. We want you to subscribe to it there. I said it in a more energetic way, subscribe and like. But anyways, yeah, just let us know if there's any webinars you guys are interested in as well. We try to rotate. We try to rotate the people that are doing them. That way, you don't get bored with just one voice. And use our chat, email in. We'd love to help you guys out. Okay. Well, that's the end. Thank you guys so much for joining. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.